Hey everybody, here is Roberto Reyes at the GFCC. It's really a pleasure to be here today for one of the first GFCC dialogues on infrastructure and competitiveness. And I'm really happy to have today with us Claudio Puty. Claudio is a vice minister in the Ministry of Planning and Budget in Brazil. He is in charge of international operations and international affairs there. And we'll be talking about Brazil investment in infrastructure and beyond. And together with me, interviewing and talking with Claudio, I have my colleague and friend Rogério Studer. Rogério is a distinguished fellow here at the GFCC, a former executive director at the World Bank. Claudio, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really great to have you here. And talking about Brazil, I come from Brazil too, yeah. But so one of the things that we always think is how much is needed for Brazil to catch up in terms of infrastructure, in terms of investment today?
Brazil has a very low rate of investment in GDP compared to, well, we normally talk about China. There's a very high savings rate, and as a consequence, a very high investment to GDP ratio. But if you look at Korea, that has 25% of GDP as investment, Brazil ranges from 15 to 20% historically. We could, in the last 5 years, reach, in the best years, in the midst of the commodity boom, 20%, which is pretty low for consistent 5% rate of growth of GDP. So this is not enough. When the super cycle of commodities that allowed us to have a high increase on earnings from federal government ended, from 2012 to now, we have had a slowly declining, and faster now from 2014, declining on federal and overall revenues from central government. That creates a lot of problems. As a consequence, we have a deceleration. So the commodity boom hit us. Why am I saying that? Because last year we had a lower rate of investment in GDP.
How low was that?
16, 17%. Okay, from 20 in the best years. If you decompose that, what's the main difference between Brazil and Korea, for example? It's infrastructure, housing and logistics.
You mean in terms of the investment
GDP? Over GDP. So in other areas, we are pretty close to Korea or even China as a percentage, but the big gap is infrastructure, logistics, infrastructure energy, infrastructure oil and gas, infrastructure housing.
And how will Brazil close that gap?
So let's start talking about the problems.
Yep,
Brazil has a very complicated budgetary process, a very bureaucratic environment for investment, either private investment or government investment. We have a series of control institutes or control elements of our institutional framework that make it somewhat slow and complicated, the process of investment, and that kind of creates a process of expectations formation that is not pro-business or pro-investment. From the government point of view, there was a kind of centralization of investment efforts in the form of, they called it the PAC, the PAC, the program of acceleration of growth last year, which was, I believe, a success. We have had executed something close to 1 trillion reais in the last 10 years.
Okay,
which is pretty considerable. There you have oil and gas, energy, Eletrobras.
Wow, that was $400 billion.
And then you have what you call money directly from the federal budget for roads and ports, etc.
Let me, sorry for interrupting, just tapping on the points that Rogério has raised. You said 1 trillion and
executed. It's not budget.
Already executed paid. And implemented, actually invested in what period of time?
The first pack was 2007, from 2007 to 2014.
Okay, like 7-8 years.
7-8 years process.
Okay.
But then we have in 2014 a kind of quagmire, a tsunami,
Okay.
which is a combination of the end of the commodity super cycle related to this huge Petrobras scandal. So you have a combination of judiciary / political problem combined with deceleration of our overall demand for commodities, soy, iron, etc. And that creates a big problem. How do you finance this level of infrastructure investment? Then in last May, we launched a new program based on logistics. We call it PIL, the PIL, Program for Infrastructure and Logistics, which has numbers reaching 300 billion reais in four to 6 years. In this first period, we're talking about something around 40 to 50 billion reais. You divide it by 4, depends on the exchange rate. We don't know how the exchange rate is volatile world today. But you can divide by 3.5, have dollar figures. That is basically logistics.
Okay.
Then you have these amount. Let's say I'll use reais. So 300 billion reais next 4 to 6 years in logistics. Then you have Petrobras. Petrobras, from the state-owned companies, is probably 75% of the overall investment, which is really important. Petrobras has curtailed its investment program, is disinvesting in some areas, is selling some assets because it needs to adapt to the new conditions. So the Petrobras investment plan for the next 4 years is something around 40 billion, 50 billion reais. Electrobras, which is also a big player, hydropower, like some clean energy, and etc. Also,
so Electrobras is in electricity, generation, transmission
of electricity, generation and transmission of electricity. We have had some changes in the regulatory process in Electrobras, and Electrobras balance sheet was hardly hit. So Electrobras also has problems in investment, although we have a very robust portfolio of hydropower plants. That may give us another 100 billion as investment in the, Petrobras plus Electrobras plus PIL. We may be talking about 400, 500 billion reais of investment in infrastructure.
in which period of time?
I'd say 4 to 6.
4 to 6 years.
4 to 6 years.
And tell me something.
Then where money comes from?
Yeah.
Let me jump in and ask you one thing. Yesterday, you participated in the seminar yesterday that we heard from a director of the National Development Bank. And one of the problems that Brazil has, like many other countries, is lack of projects. It's interesting that my experience, I've been talking a lot to the financial sector, both in Brazil and abroad. And there's a clear interest in financing projects. So how would you interpret that idea that you, at the same time, you have a lot of interest and projects are not there, with the clear vision that you have that there is a significant gap in infrastructure, and that if you had access to financing, for instance, there is plenty of projects out there. Do you see any? How do you see that?
Just to clarify that, Roger, you were saying that the point that was raised in the conversation in which you took part yesterday is that what is constraining the system is not the availability of financial resources, but actually, let's say, projects, blueprints that really designed and ready to be implemented.
Well, if I may, just because it's good to explain a little bit further. I mean, there's a lot of liquidity in the international markets, but also in Brazil. I mean,
Okay.
you have significant amount of, for instance, pension funds or institutional investors that want to, uh, that need to carry long-term assets. And then on the other side, there is a significant need for investment infrastructure and logistics. The country, if they come, the country will be able to produce significantly more, and that demand is going to be that supply of infrastructure is going to be used. But what I think the director of the National Development Bank was saying is that you need to transform the project in something that matches the 2 points. And what you're saying confirms to me that there is an enormous perspective in terms of investment. But I want to hear from you. I don't want. I have some ideas there, but I would like to see how you see that as somebody who's working as a policymaker.
And just sorry for just if I may add something in relation to what you just said. What's the size of the gap? You talked about what is planned in some way, what is in the pipeline in terms of projects, and Roger raised questions related to the balance between availability of resources and projects. But actually, what's the size of the gap
of infrastructure? Well, that's a gap hard to measure, but we can talk about overall figures. But let me start by Rogero's point. We're talking about long-term finance. We have a lot of liquidity in the market, but not all of this liquidity, only a tiny part of it is interested in long-term investment. That's a point. The private banking system does not, in Brazil, does not invest in long-term financing of infrastructure, period. So state banks, public banks were crucial to sustain this level of investment we have reached so far. BNDES, Banco do Brasil, particularly after 2008, when there was a large risk aversion in the world markets, no different in Brazil. So you can see the figures. Those who are ejecting liquidity in Brazil's market, either for retail operations or for long-term financing, was public banks, and that comes from treasury money, that public money. And then you have a decrease, a sharp decrease in the earnings of federal government. And how do you keep the things going? It's hard to do that. So we have to rely on a combination, largely inspired by KfW's experience in Germany, by the usage of some market instruments combined with some stimulus from the curtailed but still existing budgetary resources. So the logistics plan, what we are trying to do, we are in the process of bidding for that. It has been, we have a lot of expressions of interest for each road. We have roads, railroads, ports, etc. The easiest ones, which are not greenfield, part of it are brownfield, it have had already been bid before, which are roads and bridges, like the Rio Niterói Bridge, have had a very successful bid.
in terms of concession? Finding operators.
We're talking about concessions here. We have had, on average, 29 to 30 expressions of interest for each project. The bidding process may happen this year. We're talking about 2015, early 2016. So there's interest there. The financing for that would be a combination of up to 70% of TJLP, which is BNDES subsidized interest rates, long-term interest rates.
What's different from the basic interest rate?
Which is like 15%. That would be, the TJLP has raised as well from 7.5, but it's still half of the basis point rate, which is the Selic. And for railroads, we are planning to have at least maximum 70% of the TJLP financing, and for roads up to 30%, combined with the issuance of infrastructure bonds and debentures. we don't, for roads, it has already happened. In the past, we have had some issues of bonds for some of the special purpose vehicles that are managing these roads. For airports as well, it has been pretty successful. But for greenfield projects that combine environment impact, social impact, is a very long-term maturation process, like railroads. It's a little bit more difficult. We don't know yet what will be the result of that. But to answer partially your question, we are trying to combine infrastructure bonds with some stimulus from government money.
Let me make a comment on that, because I think this is really good. I mean, a lot of our friends out there do not know that Brazil has a very peculiar situation when it comes to its own financial and financing. Financial sector is financing. Brazil has there's a concentration in the short run with very high interest rates. So, even though the institutional investors they demand long-term assets, it doesn't make a lot of sense to invest in long-term assets, because you are investing in very low risk assets in the short run with very high interest rates. So on
the treasury bills, they basically crowd out investment, because they capture the short-term investment. So we talked to 80 institutional funds in New York last July, and they tell us basically, tell me a good story about Brazil, first of all, and secondly, why would I invest in a railroad in the Amazon, or when I have the NTN bonds, which are paying really well. Our response to that, talk to the infrastructure operators that are already in Brazil, airports, roads. They have operational leverage, and they can make up to very, very good rates of return over the long run, because our interest rates will not stay at this level for 30 years. So
this is interesting. I think this is the point. Yeah, but there's going to be a passage from that. You have a huge demand of the National Development Bank, which is doing its job pretty well. It's responding very well to that demand. However, the gap is so significant.
The gap in terms of the investment
need. Investment
That's
need.
a question which I haven't answered yet.
But sorry, but you want to. Let me elaborate a little bit of this, because I want to hear your opinion about that. You are seeing as a policymaker, you're looking at the long run, and you're saying to the investors, which I think is completely correct, which is this is not what should be the normal situation. I mean, long-term investors, particularly international investors, and that the international investors, institutional investors understand, they need to match their contingent liabilities in the future. So in the long run, you'll be able to buy long-term assets. Now the National Development Bank is overwhelmed with the demand, but we'll need still to increase in the future. How do you see the role of the National Development Bank in terms of being the platform in the long run in crowding in and bringing the private finance into the game? Because you have to create the bridge at some point. Do you see any role in that?
Let me elaborate based on what Rogerio has raised, because you basically said that it's hard to make the case for an investment in infrastructure in Brazil in the beginning. Yeah, as it is, because there are lots of opportunities if you invest in government bonds, etc. They are competing with opportunities in infrastructure in terms of capital allocation. But you also said that those that are there on the ground operating infrastructures, they're making money. So, and your advice has been, go talk with those guys, and you can understand, because they're making money. Yeah. So it's initially a kind of tough sell, but there are opportunities, and people should go deep in terms of understanding the market conditions, etc. Okay, that's perfect. And we also talked about, let's say, mobilizing private capitals. And my question here, because it's not just about Brazil in general, let's say there are estimations that 1 trillion US dollars is left on the table around the globe every year in infrastructure projects. Yeah, because those projects don't find the resources that are needed, yeah, to make investment happen. So in some way, Brazil is a subset of the problem. Yeah, but I think that what Rogério has said about mobilizing private capitals, and I want to highlight that, is how sophisticated is the Brazilian market in terms of the tools that are available to mobilize private capitals, like bonds and securitization, let's say, tools, etc.
But let's make a point before I forget that is important, because you said about the role of the National Development Bank and state banks. I have in my research, it has become clear that development banks and public banks, both in developed and developing countries, always had an extremely important role in financing infrastructure, particularly that has externalities and so on. For instance, very people know that, for instance, in Germany, one of the main players in infrastructure is a public institution, KfW. So this idea, there's nothing extraordinary in the case of Brazil that of the National Development Bank playing their role. What is extraordinary in Brazil is the fact that you have a financial system that is at the very short end, and where the interest rates for the short run are very high. So it makes it difficult for you to sell, at the end of the day, long-term assets to institutional investors. In the other places, you are able, for instance, the National Development Bank has a role to finance directly, but it's able to place more bonds with the long-term investors. Do you see that? Do you see that happening in Brazil in the future? And what role do you think that the National Development Bank can have in making that bridge? That was the question that I wanted to ask.
Yeah, let me talk about the gap. Well, we have 15 to 20% of investment in GDP. Now, GDP is around 2 trillion, 0.3 reais. That will make us something around, ranging from infrastructure out of investment, around 90 billion a year that is being paid now out of public budget. We would need to rise it at least 50% in order to have a rate of growth that is comparable to a 4.5% rate of growth in Brazil that creates jobs, highly productive jobs, etc. So we have a very important task in the future is to raise that. I think it's the most important task for a policymaker in Brazil.
So you said that it's needed to raise 50%.
50% in order to reach
investment in general, or investment in infrastructure?
Infrastructure. Yeah. Because investment in infrastructure out of the general investment is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
You know?
So we talk about 45 billion reais, more or less.
More or less.
Oh my gosh.
And then,
in addition to what?
In addition to
with 45 billion reais, it's going to be
12 today, like 12 to 15 billion US dollars.
That's a big challenge. You know? And related to that, let me elaborate a little bit more on the rates of return. Our rates of return in roads, airports, ranging from 15 to 20% a year.
Not bad.
It's pretty
15
good.
to 20%.
15 to 20% of the concessions of airports and roads.
This is excellent.
It's hard to measure sometimes because you have operational leverage, and in which each company has its combination of costs. You know, so you can raise, depending on the productivity of the concessionary, its rate of return. So you have people investment in logistics even competing with government bonds because they know it's pretty profitable. And then this interest on new concession round is no surprise for us. And we want to move further. Why are we talking about now in Brazil about PPPs and concessions? For a combination of two things. One is regulatory, and one is fiscal. The fiscal side I've talked about here. We have less money than before. On the regulatory side, we have had profitable concessions, and someone from the government point of view side would say, why? Why don't we keep it in the state-owned companies? Because it's profitable. Why we keep only the low quality beef, whereas giving the filet mignon to the private sector? Because we have a very complicated regulatory process. In some places, for example, concessions of, I won't mention the specific airport. We have had Infraero, which is a state-owned company, and Zurich airports.
Okay.
Zurich airports
working together.
Working together in the same airport concession.
It's a joint venture.
It's they have different. It's a joint venture. They have, but they are taking part of the different taking care of different parts of the airport.
Okay.
Okay. Zurich airports is ruled with different legislation than Infraero, because Infraero is public. So to Infraero,
public government-owned,
state-owned.
Zurich is private.
It's private. It's private. It's the largest airport operator in the world. They take care of a lot of airports in Europe. Whenever they have a problem with a contractor, they can change contractors like this, but not Infraero. So the bottom line is the concession to Zurich Airport, this airport is pretty well. The investment has been done. They have done investment beyond what we expected. And Infraero, which has a profitable business, is being constrained by a set of bureaucratic rules and control agencies that just tie them up.
And how do you think that?
And whenever they have problems with contractors, they need to denounce the contracts, initiate another bid, and etc. And managers are all scared because they can face juridical problems, if they don't, of course, follow the law.
So you're basically saying that the private sector has a speed that cannot be matched by government-owned companies.
Well, in some specific cases that we have seen.
Okay.
On the other hand, on the supply of credit, state has been proven to be fundamental because we don't have long-term financing from private banks.
Anywhere, by the way, this is
anywhere. By the way, in Brazil, you have like 15. You have this rate of returns for government bonds in our basic interest rates. It's even more. It is even deeper. The problem. So BNDES, Banco do Brasil, Caixa Econômica will keep a place in the Brazilian economy that is fundamental, that I believe in other countries like this. We're talking about a country of 205 million people that has a territory which is larger than the continental United States. You're not talking about small-scale solutions. The solutions for Brazil must be big. And then we are counting on some combination of state money with a deepening of our capital markets. We have had incredible sophistication on our institutional framework in capital markets in the last 15 years, basically through some what we call the novo mercado, a set of new rules
in the stock market,
in our security exchange agents. And we have a robust market for bonds today and debentures, but it still is not big enough to address the gap that we have been talking around here. So we will keep needing a combination of these things, whereas we try to foster reliability on our institutions so that we can bring. But as Rogério said, if you allow me a kind of academic elaboration, we have a problem at the world level. we have a conflict between Basel III and liquidity.
Mm.
We have
That's right.
we have a world where financial funds are plenty, but volatility. Exactly because of that, we have a strong volatility in most of the market created by limitless liberalization on financial flows. And then after 2008, you enforce Basel III that impacts all the development banks like the IDB, the World Bank, CAF, that needs to have more paid-in money. So you have a
You completely
you have
right.
you have some frozen assets
Yeah.
in financial markets that are not possibly be invested. We need some kind of consultation, coordination at the world level. We're talking about some Bretton Woods-like kind of agreement at the world level, where I don't think markets on its own will be able to coordinate a solution to address our huge infrastructure gap. We need
But
politics jumping in.
Yeah.
We need some politics jumping in. We need some kind of combination which allow us to create an institutional environment where these funds could be addressed to infrastructure gaps.
This is very interesting. I mean, it's not an academic issue, by the way. I mean,
It's very practical.
It's very good and straight on the point. But let me tell you something. Many developed economies, nations with developed economies, are now creating development banks in order to address the issue.
There's here in the United States,
there's a discussion
there's
about.
an ongoing debate on an
But
infrastructure.
I never thought that you have an extremely good point, because it's all the points are good, but this one's because of the change of regulation, because of the trauma that we had with the financial crisis. The change of regulation led to a situation that we even have less access to long-term financing, and you have to have some consultation about that and how you make the bridge. So you have liquidity on the one side, you have a lot of need for infrastructure investment, but the bridge is not made.
Because you have volatility.
But you also, before that, and I like that, I want to explore that with you later. But before that, you said, well, Brazil has got to do its homework in terms of changing regulation, for making infra a little bit more flexible in terms of the bidding process.
Not just infrared. Yeah.
Infra or other parts.
Yeah.
As a policymaker and being the discussion of policymaking in Brazil, do you see that happening? Are you entertaining in the near future?
There's a lot of proposals in Congress to change the number the law, the bidding law, which is, we make a joke, it's the number of the beast. The age 666 is the number of the law. That's the 866. Which is very bureaucratic. Of course, it protects us from a lot of misusage of public money.
Are you sure about that?
Well, imagine without it then. But maybe it gets so complicated that, on the other hand, you have a point. It gets so complicated that corruption is stimulated. It's an opinion. But we need a change on that. I was in Congress. I was the rapporteur for 2 times of the changes in the regulation for small-owned business, what we call simple national.
Okay. So you said you were testifying in the Brazilian Congress on those things.
Yeah, I was reporting.
Okay.
Rapporteur.
No, he was the rapporteur of the
changes of
Okay,
the law,
yeah.
of the set of rules
He
for
was a
small.
congressman before, so he was the
Oh.
rapporteur. He was chairing,
Mhm.
the group of parliamentarians that were.
Oh, okay. I got it.
Yeah.
Got it. I was the rapporteur on the changes of the tributary and regulatory law for small and medium companies, which you probably know that, the simple
I do know.
national. As the name says, it's basically to simplify the legislation. I was so surprised because I didn't know it was so complicated to open a company in Brazil. Even worse, if you want to close it down, it's impossible, and that creates a lot of costs because you have a very complicated federation.
Yeah.
Each state with a set of different rules. If you want to make business and do business in two different states, you have to face a different legislation on the matters of the state taxes, and we changed that with a lot of opposition from people from the Treasury, people from our RS. That has worked. When I reported that, we had 1.5 million individual companies. We created a new called individual enterprise. Now we have more than 10 million in 4 years.
Okay.
So
that's great.
It shows that simplification also on the regulatory side, the regulatory environment helps a lot.
So
private investment or public investment.
Just for people to know, so Brazil has 27 states and let's say 5,500 municipalities, right?
Yeah, and we are the only huge federation in the world that has its most important tax, which is our value-added tax we call ICMS, at the subnational level. It's a state tax. So imagine 27 legislations for the most important tax. So that creates a particularly important hurdle.
But Claudio, what you're saying basically is that you're thinking of regulatory changes in the near future that are going to make not only business in general much more flexible but also investing in infrastructure more attractive. And this is what he's saying, because you're saying that you have a set of regulations that create constraints. I have to say that to you that
productivity in general.
I have to say to you that I was at the World Bank for 7 years, and I discuss over and over again the issue of those issues and the business environment. And I have to say that Brazil, very few people know that, but the Brazilian government has been the most active in dealing with these issues. And certainly these things are changing in a way that in the very near future you're going to have a complete set of regulatory environment that is going to be much more friendly to attract investors. So there are very few people know about that, so I thought it was good to say that.
In this case, it's a joint effort from the legislative branch and the executive branch. You have a set of different pressure.
Let me play let's say the devil's advocate here.
It's important.
It is. Let's imagine that the basic income rate drops in Brazil, to let's say 4%, a year. Do we have, or would Brazil have, the tools, financial tools like bonds, etc.,
That's an excellent question.
Mobilize capital, or are there any changes in legislation that are needed in terms of developing the private sector participation in let's say, in an infrastructure market, in investments in infrastructure? Let's say, considering the current framework, if the interest rate goes down, is that enough to drive private capitals towards investments in infrastructure, or are there changes that need to be done in terms of improving capital markets?
On the capital market side, I'm not an expert of that, but I think we have made some important changes in the last 5 years. For investment funds, for example, we have a tax rate for foreign investors. They don't pay income tax up to 40, if they have up to 40% of participation of what they call the FIP, which is an investment in equity fund.
Yep.
So and we have a very robust set of institutions. Our CVM is our Securities Exchange Commission. Works pretty well. It's pretty independent from the government, and you have also our organization of the capital markets. The ANBIMA is a pretty strong player. So we are confident with this set of regulation. The problem is scale. Okay, scale depends on growth as well. So these things also have a feedback, and they're working on growth. We'll have a bad year. 2015 is a year of recession. but we are working hard in order to have a happier 2016, even with the investment grade problems and everything. But we believe that the state will still play a fundamental role on that. On the set of regulatory laws to foster investment, we have changed regulation for ports.
Okay.
Ports in Brazil were like medieval. We liberalized port building. As for private terminals, we have had a boom of investment, particularly for the traders and soy companies, soy-related traders everywhere. We have had at least 20 to 30 last 2 years inaugurations of private terminals. As for the public ports, we changed the law 2 or 3 years ago, but until last June, it's still in our audit court waiting for a decision, which is not an executive branch, it's a legislative branch.
Yeah.
They finally allowed us to follow the law that was approved before, so we can now bid the ports with the new legislation. Airports, I told you, we have made concessions. Roads are doing fine. It's the oldest, back to the 90s, that had concessions in roads. And now the new challenge are railroads, because we had in the 30s a very large network of railroads, and we are learning again how to build railroads. There's this Trans-Pacific Railroad, the North-South Railroad.
Well, where's the situation related to the Trans-Pacific Railroad?
Well,
Because the world is looking more and more towards the Pacific.
Mhm.
How is Brazil going to get connected?
Before you answer, I was going to tap into something. This is. But
So just to sum up, we have already changed
A lot of things. in
important
legislation.
set of legislation towards some more flexible rules for the private sector, either in the capital markets, either in the participation in concessions. So,
This is a very interesting point. While you're saying your question was, is the market going to respond? In my analysis, it never does by itself. It does very slow. It's very simple.
It's about learning.
It's about learning. It's about creating institutions. It's about creating instruments. If you look at the experience in many countries, you always have the state playing a role of
The government.
the government playing a role not only in creating the regulation, but also in creating the instruments and sometimes the markets. I mean,
Building momentum.
in the United States, for instance,
Building
the
momentum.
mortgage market it's a creation from one public institution, which had problems later on, but it was created a whole market for mortgage-backed securities.
etc.
In Brazil, when you had a reduction of interest rates only recently, the National Development Bank started working with the government, start creating an instrument which is an infrastructure bond, which was in 2013. The response was good, even given the volatility and the high interest. It was good. 17 billion reais were bought by institutional investors. The problem is that, first of all, think that you have to have somebody going ahead and building the instrument and then creating the culture, creating the liquidity provision and so on, and then it starts taking off. You can wait for a long time. Brazil cannot wait. No country can wait. Germany could not wait. The KfW created its own infrastructure bonds that were put in with institutional investors. So you need the government not only to push on the regulation, but also acting to help foster markets. That's what I was talking about, the role of the national. That's something that people don't get. And there's no in the discussion, international discussion, there is no
0 and 1.
0 or 1. It's always working together. And particularly infrastructure with the needs are so great, and you cannot wait.
Yep.
So, but now, I like what you are here because I think that I confirms that I'm not completely wrong in my analysis. But talk
wrong alone.
That's a good.
Yeah. Let me maybe switch the conversation to, or turn into a different direction. Yeah. So investments in infrastructure mobilize a lot of capital all over the globe. It's the same. Yeah. And because of that, there are lots of opportunities to drive innovation, technology development, etc. How is that being done in Brazil or being attempted in Brazil?
Well, we are looking forward investment that could bridge the gap with low-hanging fruits and help us foster fast some productivity gains. I think in some areas, solar energy, clean energy, well, the California experience is an example for that. We may have a lot of different areas in Brazilian economy where some contact with the frontier of technological change will help us a lot. Some already embedded technology gains, and I think through investment, and if you bring in some good concessionaries, that may help, and that will propitiate a fast productivity gain through this process. We have seen that before on roads, and I hope in ports that may happen soon, because our ports have a very low productivity level. A port in the Amazon is very important, Manaus, that has a Hyundai plant. They'd rather bring their products from Busan in Korea to São Paulo because it's faster and it's cheaper than from Manaus to São Paulo, because it's so bureaucratic, so complicated, they have security issues, and etc. That may not go on.
That's very interesting. But you touch on something that is interesting, because when you mention the low-hanging fruit, you mention sustainable infrastructure investment, which also has to do with it brings a lot of innovation, and so you think that Brazil is going to go on that path?
I hope so.
So one of the conversations that we will have soon is with our GFCC member from Korea, Minister Taishin Kwan, and he is to be the Korean ambassador to the OECD, and he is to be the co-chair of the Korean Presidential Council on Competitiveness, like a few years ago. And one of the things that they did, they had, let's say, an initiative to build 1 million green houses. And because of that, new industries were created, technologies for energy conservation, etc. So insulation. You create a market because of that drive. So that's interesting. That's the kind of stuff.
That's not what an experience before, because it could be easily replicated in Brazil.
Yeah.
Well, we have to put.
That's the kind of low-hanging fruit I'm talking about. An experience like that.
Yeah. So, Claudio, thank you so much for coming, for joining your ideas with us. That was great. We really hope to see you in Saudi Arabia. We're continuing this conversation, and thank you so much, Rogério, for taking part in this and really helping us to have this great conversation.
I learned a lot.
Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So stay tuned. More to come in the GFCC in relation to competitiveness and infrastructure. Thank you.